بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد إخوة الإسلام عباد الله. I'd like to welcome the brothers and sisters to another episode of Heavyweight Dialogue. And this evening's topic will be on the sacrifice of our elders in establishing Islam within inner city areas or the inner city community. And before beginning this particular discussion, and first and foremost, I'd like to remind the brothers and sisters that the link to the discussion will be placed in the live chat area for those that would like to participate in this discussion. And second, I would encourage the brothers and sisters to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button on this video for obvious reasons. Now, with that said, when dealing with this particular subject matter, dealing with the sacrifice of our elders, when I say elders, some may get the impression that I am being restrictive and referring to maybe perhaps our elders in Dawah, like people like Sheikh Dawood Adib or Sheikh Farid Abdullah, and thus forth and so on. That's not what I mean. I'm not being restrictive. I'm being general and all-inclusive of the elders within the inner city, and which may be shocking to some, but this is referring to Salafi and non-Salafi. You know, I mean, those who are traversing upon the Sunnah and those that may be considered amongst many to not be traversing upon the Sunnah. That these elders sacrificed to establish Islam to the point where we, as people who are in younger generations, I'm 43 years old. My participants on the panel are in their 40s. We and those who are younger than us that are in their 20s and 30s, we all are benefiting from the sacrifice of our elders, meaning those that are practicing Islam in inner city and or underprivileged areas, yani the quote unquote hood. For Muslims that are living in these areas or have lived in these areas, we know we could walk down the street holding our heads high as Muslims. But the reason why the atmosphere was like that within these areas was as a direct result of our elders and their sacrifice. And so when looking at their sacrifice, then we want to have a discussion concerning what they have accomplished and how we in generations that has come after them, have we really been grateful for the contributions of our elders in that regard? Because to a very, very large degree, we are benefiting from the work that they put in. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala knows best. So I'd like to begin this particular discussion. And I see our brother Ismail, his mic is already open. So we'll begin with our brother, inshallah. وفقنا الله وإياكم. تفضل يا إسماعيل.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه كما يحب ربنا تعالى ويرضى. صلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تمسك بسنته ليوم الدين. First of all, as always, thank Allah for this opportunity, and we thank our host and our co-panelists for their consistent participation. And just brief, there was a discussion I think the three of us had some time ago. We were talking about, that tremendous sacrifice that the elders made. And we also talked about one of the mistakes where, man, I also remember having this conversation with my brother Khalil, who normally calls in on another occasion. One of the mistakes that we make is we often do fail to acknowledge the sacrifice that our elders made by accepting Islam, those of them who are able to learn Islam properly and then teach Islam, and those who are able to just learn Islam and practice Islam. You know what I mean? On so many different levels. Just the simple fact that the name, the word Islam, and the concept of a Muslim, and people being Muslim, and people opening masajid, and so on and so forth. All of these things, barakallahu fi, were tremendous accomplishments and sacrifices that they made when Islam was strange, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us it was. These people went and took on the identity of Muslims, personality of Muslims, the characteristics, the traits Muslims are supposed to have, and they did it. As far as the Western Hemisphere is concerned, they did it, many of them, without having anyone hold their hand or walk them through it, like how we're able to do with our children and grandchildren, inshallah. These brothers and sisters accepted Islam at a time when nobody even knew who a Muslim was. You know what I mean? And that's a tremendous sacrifice. And we were talking about how important it is for us to acknowledge that. And one of the big mistakes that we made as Salafis, and I don't know if I'm jumping the gun, but I remember us discussing about one of the biggest mistakes that we did make as Salafi youth is that whatever information Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed us to acquire and gain access to, and whatever, little pieces of knowledge or, you know what I mean, and understanding of Islam in its proper form, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided us to and exposed us to and allow us to understand. I think that we failed in certain aspects to come back from studying, and when we went back into our communities and started to, return back to our hometowns and so on and so forth. One of the mistakes some of the brothers made was that instead of getting in a position of support, being a young person who supports leadership, those who preceded us in sacrifices and so on and so forth. One of the mistakes that we made, and I think even some of them made, was that we allowed ourselves to gain leadership. And there's nothing wrong, obviously, with people who may have more education, being in leadership positions and playing leadership roles or supporting the leadership. But for it to be almost as if the elders are non-existent in some of these communities, and if they are, their presence, and for lack of better expression, their presence is I'm not going to say weak, but it's not felt the way it's supposed to be felt. You know what I mean? And the charge that we need for our elders to take, in many cases, was not taken. Whether that's because they themselves felt intimidated and they figured, okay, this brother can recite Fatiha properly or understands Islam seemingly better than me. Or it was because the brothers themselves came back, didn't see a tremendous need for those brothers anymore, So what he did was went and opened his own Dawah center or masjid or whatever the case is, and went ahead about his business. And that caused a major disconnect, because there are things that a person can only develop, if the areas in a person's character and overall well-being that will only develop and progress if that person has a certain level of life experience. So these elders, they had the life experience. They were seasoned, they were exposed to things, they had a lot of trial and error. You know what I mean? They knew more about women than us and being a husband, and the women as well. They knew more about being wives in a lot of aspects than our women that are in our same age groups. And us not tapping into that and utilizing that and forming a team and putting together communities that were a fusion between young people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed to go and acquire certain aspects of knowledge and understanding and information as relates to the religion, and the older people who may have not had those opportunities. Some of them did, but a majority of them didn't have those opportunities, but they had a life experience. Instead of us coming together and making this fusion of a community, we kind of did our own thing in a lot of aspects. And the elders, many of them, again, due to what I would believe may be insecurity or whatever the case is, or, like a rogue humility that got out of control, it became almost like insecurity or a feeling of inferiority because they can't speak Arabic or so on and so forth. That just, it created a mess. So I think that us honoring them and acknowledging their sacrifices and respecting them for it, a part of that is going to entail us involving them in our communities on a much more significant level, and so on and so forth. That's all I wanted to present regarding that.
Now, first and foremost, barakallahu feek, first and foremost. When looking at this situation, I think the dynamics, depending on what community and what side of the country you're in, some of the intricacies may differ, without a doubt. But I do believe that there is still an overlapping sentiment, and I don't even want to say sentiment, but an overlapping moves that were made regardless of what side of the country you're on or not. And I think really to unpackage this discussion, it becomes important for us to, one, highlight when looking at what the elders have done. Now, when we go to Los Angeles, California, a city that was and is gang infested, a lot of gang violence and things of that nature, establishing masajids in some of those areas took a certain type of bravery to ensure that the interest of the community was safeguarded. And when I say a certain type of bravery, because those elders may have had to do things that some people, some of the brothers and sisters who are younger than us in their early 20s and like this would consider to be one unorthodox, to say the least. And in their minds, probably far-fetched. They don't realize the type of things that they had to do in order to establish their communities and make sure the sisters could walk down the street with no problem, the children could play with no problem, and thus forth and so on. There were some communities in LA, and I'm using LA because that's where I'm from, and I could speak for what is taking place there. But I know that what I'm about to say, it's not isolated to LA. I've heard about things of this nature taking place in other parts of the country. That our elders literally had to move negative elements out of the immediate area of the masajid and where the Muslims were congregating. There was no other way, and at times it even became violent. Yeah, so I'm just going to mention a masjid in LA where there were families living immediately around the masjid, and the Bloods were on the same street, slanging and banging. Their rivals coming through, shooting at them, and thus forth and so on. So, of course, this became a problem because the masjid was on that block, and children were on that block playing and things of that nature, and the women folk, and thus forth and so on. And so now, because this activity is happening, the elders, back then they were young, but they had to step in and say, listen, we can't have this over here. We have children, this and that. We would appreciate it if y'all could, this activity y'all got going on here, if you guys can cut it. And when the gang, as usual, didn't have respect for the elders, they forced the issue and put the, instead of putting respect in it, they had to put the fear in them. And we benefit from that to this day because those same streets, we could walk down holding our heads up high as Muslims practicing the sunnah with the widest thobes on and longest of beards and thus forth and so on. We benefited from their sacrifice. Some brothers may have went to jail. Some brothers may have been harmed bodily in some way or another, but they moved those elements out of there to the point where the families and the children would be safe. So I think it's very, very, very important when talking about the sacrifice of the elders that this is just an aspect of their sacrifice. But I'm saying this because it's an extreme. It would be considered to some to be extreme, but they literally, this is not figuratively now, they literally put their lives on the line to ensure that Islam was established in these inner cities, the worst parts of America, in order for Muslims to be able to walk down the street, yani, with no problems. And we, as people who are younger than them, are benefiting from that still to this day. So I wanted to point that out as we continue this discussion. No. Both of you guys are muted. You're muted, Sadiq. And
Hey, nah, Jazakallah khair. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa ba'd. I think, alhamdulillah, may Allah Ta'ala reward each and every one of you tremendously. May Allah Ta'ala continue to bless the brothers immensely. This is a very important topic, and it is one that if we are to be successful moving forward, we have to, we have to have this discussion that we have to have, and the things that we have to, certain issues that we have to face and tackle head on. Firstly, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Laysa minna man lam yarham saghirana wa yuwaqqir kabirana." That he is not from us the one who does not have mercy upon our young, nor respect for our old, for our old. And this hadith is I believe well known. Hassanahu al-Albani wa rawahu at-Tirmidhi. It's very important that we keep this in the back of our minds, right? Undoubtedly, there was a tremendous disconnect, and I believe in many cases, and to some degree, there is still a disconnect between the generations, between us being the Generation X, and I believe a lot of the baby boomers. And then, of course, those are younger than us from the millennials and so on and so forth. And there's even maybe a greater gap between them and what would be deemed the baby boomers. But one of the reasons I believe that this disconnect exists is because there are some of us who have a warped understanding on how we should interact with our elders, being that there are some of them who they're not upon the sunnah, right? So there becomes a a misapplication of certain things, treating them as if they are they all are obstinate, and the like. Now, of course, those individuals who are not upon the sunnah, from the people of innovation, who are obstinate, those who are, willfully and attentively upon what they're upon and fighting against the sunnah. This is another discussion. This is clear. We already know how we interact with the likes of people like that, right? So, we don't have to, come here and sit and explain that. These type of individuals, we already know how to deal with them. But we're talking about those individuals who this is not necessarily their case, but their case is one that is built upon ignorance. And it is very disturbing that at times it seems as if we as a generation, we don't realize what they have accomplished, right? Now, of course, I put myself as part of the blame. I'm not saying that I'm absolved for any type of blame in any which way, shape, or form, because I have my hand in interacting and dealing with them like this as well, and looking at it through a very narrow lens, looking at the world as if it is black and white without taking these things into consideration. We have to look at, we have to focus, and we have to acknowledge what they were able to accomplish, right? And in part of doing that is that we have to focus on what they were able to do given their situation, and not focusing on what they didn't have, but help them in what they don't have and what they didn't have. And I'm saying to say is that when you had a people, and when we're talking about elders, let me be clear, I'm specifically speaking about the elders from the African American community, because these are the ones who primarily established these masajid inside of these urban areas, right? So, in specifically speaking about what they were able to accomplish, now everyone knows the history of African Americans here in this Western hemisphere. We're not immigrants. We didn't come here by choice. We didn't come here because we were looking for a better life. We were kidnapped and stolen, ripped from our lands, ripped from our language, ripped from our religion, ripped everything, taken away from us, right? So people that have come through that background, and people will say, oh, but you're Guyanese as well. Yeah, they got off the boat first. They're all from the African diaspora, okay? So point is that when you look at a people who have gone through chattel slavery, you look at a people who were fed Christianity, and it was a tool that was utilized to make them better slaves. And then, alhamdulillah, Allah Ta'ala blessed them to move away from that Christianity. Many of them in these areas, not all, but many, they came through the nation of Islam with their heretical beliefs and their mythology, so on and so forth. Just pure kufr, pure kufr. Using some Islamic terms, but the belief, pure kufr, that Allah's father name was Alfonso, his mother name Baby G, a'udhu billah, pure kufr. We understand this, right? But acknowledging that, alhamdulillah, they were upon that, and then you had those who left that when the truth came to them. So what does this show you an indication of? Does it show you that they were upon that because they wanted to do what was wrong and they thought this is wrong, so let's do it? No. They thought they were doing what was correct. They were looking for the truth, and they thought that's what it was. And when they found out it was not that, then they moved on and they accepted real Islam. Now, and then what kind of knowledge was around back then? It was very scarce. So they did the best with what they had, right? And then, alhamdulillah, when the knowledge started to become more available, right, and callers to the sunnah start coming back, many of them left that and came on to the sunnah, right? And alhamdulillah, accepted the sunnah, start practicing the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ upon the understanding of the Salaf of this ummah. That is a great accomplishment. And especially we're talking about given the limited knowledge that they had, that within itself is a great accomplishment. So if anything, we should not look upon them with scorn. We should not look upon them as if they are less than or anything of that nature, but we should appreciate them because look at the struggle. Look at what they have come through. Alhamdulillah, there were many, by the time I accepted Islam in 1993, there were many who were able to quickly grab me, right? To quickly grab me and steer me away, from some of the mistakes of previous generations and say, no, 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 we don't do that. We do this. We're upon sunnah. Alhamdulillah, Sheikh Dawood Adib, he went through these phases, right? Alhamdulillah, when I met him in the late 90s, late 93, early 94, he was able to quickly grab me and say, no, 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 listen, Ahl Sunnati wa Jama'ah. You know, I didn't have to go through that same struggle that he went through because he was able to grab me, alhamdulillah, and call me to that which is correct, call me to Salafiyah at that young age. So this has to be appreciated. He wasn't the only one. There were many from his, his generation that were upon the sunnah to the best of their ability from what they knew at that time. And they were trying to help me as well. But he was instrumental in calling me to the sunnah, educating me, and he was educating those brothers as well. But the point is that there were many brothers from that generation who made strides that I think a lot of us, we don't really appreciate. And that within itself is part of the problem. And that within itself, that disconnection is a big hindrance in us moving forward. So that's the first thing really I wanted to, to put out there is that we have to, and again, we have to focus in on what they were able to do with what they had. And we should not focus on what they did not have and or do not have, but we should strive to help them in those areas. No.
And I think, when looking at this, just to add on to what you were saying, there's several things. First and foremost, when dealing with the atmosphere during the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 60s specifically, you're dealing with a time in America that was when there was a very, very big racial divide, Jim Crow and thus forth and so on. So racism was very, very prevalent, very, very manifest. Anybody that could come from one country and come to America could clearly see the racial divide. A lot of our elders, like when I was in Montgomery, Alabama, the imam there was in his 80s. And I would sit and talk to him and some of the other elders in the masjid, and they would talk about some of the things that they experienced that I have only read in books. And so me as a person, my father coming through the NOI, I understand the mentality because I understand where they, the time in which they were raised and the things that they experienced, and thus forth and so on. And so a lot of their outlook on certain things is old school, as some of us would say. It's old school, but we have to understand what shaped that understanding. And you can't neglect or negate how society was back then. So for them to be honored with Islam and to reach their 70s and their 80s, and some and for those that have reached their 90s upon Islam, then there has to be then we have to have some type of awareness of the tremendous blessing that's been bestowed upon them, especially when looking at the fact that they always understood that they didn't know it all. They always understood that, but they said they were planting seeds, and then with the hopes that their kids would get it. And now these elders, some of them are grandparents or great-grandparents. Like my father's a grandparent right now. There are people that were older than him. They're great-grandparents. And all of their children, their offspring from are all Muslim, are all Muslim. So the reason why I say this is because a lot of us broke away from the communities of the elders to establish our own things because we never took into consideration these things. We were coming back in, they're not on the Sunnah, And although we knew their history, we never considered all of this baggage and all of these years of what they've been through. We were impatient. We broke away. We didn't make ourselves an asset to the community, to the point where the elders are asking us for help and question for help as it relates to clarity in affairs of religion and thus forth and so on. Sure, you have some of the elders that were very stubborn in some of their ways, and some would just not get out the way. But the point that I'm making, there was a big lack of patience on our part too. All right, to the point now, and the reason why I'm saying this is because when I look around the country in inner city areas, like something Sadiq said, which is very true, the majority, when you're dealing in the Black American community, the majority of the masajid today, especially like if I was to say LA, the majority of the masajid in the city of LA were once, in one way or another, mosque, such as mosque with a number on it, because they were under the nation. Then when Warithuddin Muhammad took it over, they changed it to masajid. And other masajid started to spring up, and they were all under the authority of people that claim to be Bilalians. That's what our elders used to refer to themselves as back then, right? And so a lot of those masajid, unfortunately, some of us weren't patient and we broke away, but those masajid are still there and those elders are dying off. So who is supposed to inherit those masajid? And this is a dilemma that we're seeing right now. Why? Because instead of making ourselves an asset to the community and being patient with our elders and uplifting them as it relates to where their shortcomings were at in certain affairs, we were impatient and we broke away. And now some of those masajid, all you see is gray beards in them, and they're all dying off now. They're all dying off now. So that's, I'm gonna leave that out there like that and let the brothers pick up, inshallah. Both of you guys are muted.
No, I was gonna let Ismail say what he wants to say. Go ahead, Ismail, you got it.
No. Well, firstly, Barakallahu Feek, I agree with everything. I just wanted to I think I want to pose a question that'll help me probably make my next comment. How do you think we should, like at this point, there's a lot of damage that was done, a lot of mistakes were made. Where should we start? Like, you know what I mean? Like, look, you get shed some light practically on where you believe, both of you brothers. You can shed some light practically on where you think we need to begin. You know what I mean?
Were you finished with your question? Or?
Yeah. I'm done. Barakallahu Feek.
Some of these masajid, there's still strong connections with people in our peer group as it relates to family. So people can always go back. Always go back. It's not like the doors are closed. See, this is what I mean when I said that different cities, there's different dynamics depending on where you're at. Because in some cases, people broke away and started new masajid. And now, when I say people broke away, meaning the younger generation broke away and started new masajid. And so now they're busy with dealing with the responsibilities of a new masjid that they may have that may have been established 10 or 15 years ago. And the elders are at the original masjid that was there for 50 years, or or maybe less than that, but more than the masjid that was established by brothers and sisters in our peer group. So that's one type of circumstance. Now, it's easy to deal with circumstances where, for instance, people just left and went to another area, and but they couldn't establish their own masajid. I would say that the brothers have to be patient with the elders, because one thing that I could say from what I see of a lot of the elders, especially when I was in Montgomery, Alabama, those brothers want to give for themselves. They didn't want the hellfire. They weren't rejecting anything that I was saying. Uh, but I didn't. I left a good impression on people. But there were other groups of people that were on the Sunnah that were very stern with them. That rubbed them the wrong way, and so they didn't accept what they had to say because they felt like they were being attacked every time certain people came around. But when I came around, I didn't deal with them like that, because first and foremost, I had some type of respect for the fact that they were elders. And you could clearly see that they were trying to be upon the Sunnah. It's just that, they were people that, they weren't, they were people that read whatever came to them, whatever books were in the masjid that would be dropped off from wherever. And that's for Fason, they would pick those things up. And so there was some misunderstandings. If I was to give you an example, Zakat al-Fitr, they thought it was okay to give bottles of juice away, and things of that nature. So the bottom line is, depending on the community that you're in, the circumstance is different. So the way things are dealt with would be different. But generally speaking, man, brothers have to make themselves an asset to the community, where the elders see that, this person helps and adds to the community when he comes around. He's not a person that brings destruction or like a warlike atmosphere and things of that nature. And Allah knows best. Because the reality is, if a person goes into these places and they in there for the long haul, there's an expression that one of the elders in LA said, when he told me and some of the other brothers in my peer group, he said, I have more days behind me than I do in front of me. Right? And so if brothers go into those situations and they understand that, then they should understand the vital need to be a part, or to make themselves an asset of that community. Because when these elders start dying out, it has to be inherited in order for the Islam and the Muslims to continue to grow. And the expertise and know-how the elders are going to will be needed. How many brothers, do we have that hope to start masajid, don't know how to deal with basic contracts? These are something that the elders been there and done that. They understand how to run the facility and things of that nature. So we learn from them in that regard. It's a lot of situations around in some parts of the country, like it's almost baffling that we're attempting to start new masajid when you have a masjid that's been here for 40 years and the administration is getting older and older and older, and they need help. Be patient, make yourself an asset. The things that you see that's wrong within the masjid, hate it. Of course you hate it, but the hatred for those things to cause a person to either want to correct it in a way that brings about benefit, if regardless of if it's with the hand, and if one's not able with the tongue, and if one's not able, then with the heart. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala knows best.
Now, uh, I mean, we have to have patience with the elders, and may Allah Ta'ala reward both of you tremendously. We definitely have to look at the environment that they came through and realize how that shapes people's, and it shapes their understanding and their worldviews and things of that nature. I will say this.
Yes.
I will say this is that we have to be able to realize and to recognize that our elders, in many cases, they have established many masajid. They have established the backbones for communities, some of which some of us have inherited, right, or has been given to us, basically, right? Because when you look back to many of the masajid in the New Jersey, Philadelphia area, these masajid were not started by Ahlus Sunnah. These were masajid that were given to Ahlus Sunnah, right? These were masajid that came to become in the hands of Ahlus Sunnah, but they were not started from their inception by Ahlus Sunnah, because they were started at a time where even that phrase wasn't known. It wasn't greatly circulated amongst the people. As you say, brothers would call themselves Badalians and all kinds of stuff. So we have to be able to acknowledge that contribution that they have done. And from a practical standpoint, we have to realize that when you're able to add on to something that was previously there, you're able to go further than to try to start from scratch all the time, right? And I think some of our lack of development is because we're continuously striving to start from scratch. Okay. Now, as relates to the elders, and of course, a lot of us, when we came back, like I said, it was black and white. We on the Sunnah, they not on the Sunnah. We on it, they off of it, so on and so forth. This was our mentality. Is how we interacted with them. Is how we dealt with them. And we have to acknowledge the fact that we were a part of the problem, right? We were a part of the problem because the truth is already heavy, and we were making it even more heavier by our bad character. When you act in a disrespectful manner with people who are your elders, right? Even though what you're saying may be correct and you're trying to call them to what is correct, but when you do it in a manner that is rough and tough and lack of common edeb, it doesn't have the mannerisms that are appropriate, that is going to give rise to a person not paying you any attention. They're not going to put any credence to what you have to say, because if you're presenting it and this is the package that you're presenting it in, then what value could what you are presenting really have? And this is how a person is looking at it, doesn't know any better. All they know is this is the package. This guy's yelling, he's this and that, is, and so on and so forth. So this we have to acknowledge on some levels that we were a part of the problem. It requires that we have to be patient with the elders. We have to deal with them in a manner that is gentle, right? And we're talking about the common Muslims. We're not talking about the leaders, and that who have got some age from the people of innovation. No, we're not speaking about that. We're talking about common Muslims who are unaware of many things. We have to make ourselves available to them. We have to start to reach out, and to answer our brother's question, we have to strive to reach out to them and to help them and to aid them and be of value and service to them as much as possible. Because in attempting to do that, you will be able to see very quickly who is looking for the truth and open to it, and those who are stuck on whatever it is that they're stuck on. That becomes clear very fast, right? And a lot of times, if you present it in a manner that is wise, in a manner that is it doesn't mean you have to always be nice about it, because some of our elders, they understand. They come from they have a respect from when you got to get rough, right? They respect that. So I'm not saying you always have to be nice and gentle and all this type of stuff. No. But but you apply wisdom. You don't come across as if you are attacking people. You don't come across as if you're speaking down to people or speaking at people, and so on and so forth. These things are very important. I have never. And this is my own personal experience. And I'm talking specifically about the African American community, and more specifically about the followers of Wafdi Muhammad that I have encountered. Right, I have never been in front of them in the sense of either they, came to my masjid and they were present, and I have never had an argument with any of them about anything that was presented ever. If you say Allah said, the messenger said, the Sahaba said, I've never encountered any one of them that will argue that argue with me. Never. But in fact, I had open invitations. Brother, could you come to our masjid and teach? One time I was traveling and they asked me, could you come here every week and teach? This was a straight Wafdi Muhammad masjid, right? And for those who, for the naysayers and those who may be doubters, right? Basically what I did in that particular, because I was invited, right, to give the khutbah there. Some of the Salafi brothers in the area, they arranged for me to give the khutbah there during one of the conferences in that area. So I said, no problem. I went and I gave the khutbah. Basically, I gave the khutbah based on Thalathatul Usul, right? Where I was almost just reading it basically from memory in the khutbah with some slight commentary based on the commentary of Shaykh Uthaymeen and Sheikh Fawzan, right? And when it was done, the head administrator of the masjid came to me and said, brother, I love the khutbah so much. It was so beneficial. Listen, could you come here every week and teach us? And I told him, I said, brother, I would love to, but I live a few states over. I don't live in this area, and they were very heartbroken by that. It was like, subhanAllah, we was hoping that you can come and teach us. In any event, why? Is because they have a respect when they see, for lack of a better term, one of their own, right, who come from a similar background, who was able to go overseas and accomplish what they weren't able to accomplish, to, in other words, take the baton and go a little further with it. That made them happy. They were joyed by that. That day, they were like, subhanAllah, see, this is what we were talking. This is what we wanted for our youth. This is what we wanted for our children. This is what we wanted for you and your generation, to take it beyond what we were able to do and to come back and to help us, right? But a lot of times, because of our rough behavior, we alienate them, and sometimes we alienate ourselves. We don't even try. And then another thing I want to mention is that we have to remember that the elders, and again, I'm talking about the Wafdi Muhammad community and those elders who are not upon the Sunnah, but may be well-intending, right? Or well-intending is who I'm talking about. Those who are well-intending, but are ignorant, they don't know yet. They have heard propaganda against us, right? They have heard propaganda against us. The Salafis, we don't have the best reputation. I mean, let's be honest. We don't have the best reputation. A lot of that is built upon our own behavior. I'll give you an example. There was an older sister, may Allah Ta'ala bless her and preserve her, right? And she's from the Wafdi Muhammad community. And her son, alhamdulillah, is Salafi. And her son, either he was listening to a clip of mine, or he sent it to her, or so on and so forth, right? But she mentioned to him, she said, I like this guy. I don't know who this guy is, but I like what he's saying, I like what he's talking about. So her son, he said, well, do you know that's one of the brothers who, I listened to, who I learned from, he's Salafi. And his mother was shocked. She said, what? He's Salafi? Him? And I want you to hear why she didn't think I was Salafi. Right? It wasn't because of anything I was saying. It wasn't because of the content. None of that. You know what she said? She said, I'm surprised. He's Salafi. He's not yelling. He's not coming across as mean. He's not coming across as all rough and tough and screaming. I thought that's how all Salafis talk, that they teach like that. They yell at you. They rough, they tough, and so on and so forth. She was amazed by this, right? Why? Because this is what someone told her about us. But because we have alienated ourselves and we're not reaching out to teach them, we're not reaching out to have these type of conversations, they never get a chance to interact with us, so they don't know. So they go on what they heard, right? So I think one of the first steps in bridging this gap is to start to reach out and to make ourselves available as much as possible, right? To those who want it. Those who don't want it, okay, no problem. They don't want it. But we try our best to make ourselves available to the elders in our community and try to help them and teach them. And because, I mean, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, La yu'minu أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. And none of you truly believes until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. Now, which one of us wouldn't love yani to be taught and guided to the sunnah? So we should want this for them. Everything that they went through, we should want this for them. We should yani have tears in our eyes to see them not upon the sunnah. And Allah Ta'ala has guided us and blessed us to know about the sunnah. We should share that with them in the hopes that Allah Ta'ala guides them to also be upon sunnah. We should leave no stone unturned. And we have to rectify the ills and the evil repercussions that we have inherited from the horrific history that we have gone through here in this nation, because we have become a people who are very easily cut off from our past and very easily cut off from our elders in prior generations. It becomes easy for us, right? Because this is the tarbiyah that we have experienced here in this land from this horrific history that we have here. So we have to also take that into consideration, and we have to apply Islam, and we have to show our elders the respect that they are due, and we have to try to call them to what is correct, wanting good for them. Inshallah ta'ala, it's more that could be said, but I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I want to make a statement before we go to our brother Khalil. We have a guest in the discussion now, but I just wanted to say that your point about the elders being pleased and being happy when they see one from amongst their own, from amongst their children or grandchildren, capable of teaching and like this. That's something I can attest to as well. I've witnessed that. I remember when I came back from overseas in 2010, I was at one of the WD Masajid, and the people who controlled the Masajid all know my father. And so they knew what I had been doing. And, they called my father up, and I asked my father if I could give a khutbah at their masjid. And my father, of course, got at me and basically made it happen. And so I remember after I gave the khutbah, leaving or stepping outside the masjid in front, and some of the brothers, our elders, because of the, give me 1 second, my phone is blowing up. Our elders, and it's funny, right? I'm talking about the elders, right? And that was our elder Dawah Adib just calling me. I kind of wanted to pick up, right? But we got a show going, right? But anyway,
Hey, that might was an opportunity to put them on speaker and bring them on.
You're right. I probably should have took that opportunity.
Alhamdulillah. May Allah
But
bless the brother and reward him tremendously, mashallah.
At any rate, the elders, our elders kept introducing me. One of our elders kept introducing me to a lot of the elders that was there. Yeah, this is Imam Yusuf's son, and you could see the joy in the people's face, to the point that one of them said, "See, we got one from amongst us that can teach now." Right? And I remember going back to St. Andrew's to Farid Abdullah's masjid and telling him what had happened and the experience and what they were saying, and even that statement. And Farid looked at me, he said, "Oh man, you a part of the tribe, man. You need to go be patient and help them. You a part of the tribe. They're gonna let you right in." All right. And so I'm saying that to say that I can attest to what you were saying when you said that. And so if and when we go into these environments, we have to make ourselves an asset, not a liability. We have to make ourselves a source of a pleasure for them, and not a source of regret or a cause for their disgruntledness, and thus forth and so on. Khalil, how's everything, Akhi?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Everything's good.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I know you always, as usual, have some beneficial commentary for us. Tafaddali, ya Akhi.
Alhamdulillah. It's a great topic. You know, me and Ismail talk about this a lot. And understanding the historical aspect of the evolution of Islam in this country, especially in the urban community and African American community, is important, especially for a lot of you Dawah, because if you don't understand that, it's going to impede your Dawah. It's going to have an effect in terms of how you communicate people. You have to understand your demographic. You have to understand how things got to where they became, to where they are, and who are the people, who are the players, and things of that nature, and understanding they sacrifice. And so, like I explained to Ismail, after the 1975 evolution in the WD community, a lot of the people that were put in charge over the masajid, they were not as what we would quote unquote call today imams or students of knowledge. These guys were more soldiers and administrators, captains, ex-FOI captains and lieutenants that were loyal to Imam Muhammad rahimahullah. They were people who were just going to take what he said, and whatever he said was the new movement, and do it, because you had a lot of the people, the ministers that were currently in charge, some of them who were not with the program, like Minister Farrakhan and all of these people, and Jeremiah down in Philadelphia, and all of these people, they were not loyal to what was being presented. No longer this, that, and the third, the removal of the FOI. These people weren't loyal. So let me give you an example. You have in Newark, we talking about Newark, one of the biggest cities. We know that, we have the Sunnah, Salafi, and all of that stuff there. But, prior to that, the movement was what it was. There was a brother there, Rahimullah, Hussein Shabazz, who was the imam at Masjid Muhammad out there in Newark at that time. But Hussein wasn't no religious student or scholar. Hussein was a lieutenant out of Brooklyn, Temple 7C, which was now Masjid Muqsi Khalifa. His name was Lieutenant Clarence. He moved out there, changed his name to Hussein Shabazz. Imam Muhammad, rahimahullah, had put him out there because he was loyal. And them dudes in Newark was bucking the system. They ain't want them. They was giving, like, yo, we really don't want this. So with Hussein, rahimahullah, with some of the elders who had told me, his strategy was he would have a meeting with some of the toughest brothers one by one. And the brothers say that Imam Hussein, you would go in his office and you would hit a meeting and be quiet. And the next thing you know, you would hear bang, boom, 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 boom. Brother will walk out, Kufi tilted. And they said Hussein did that around 4 or 5 times. After that, you ain't have nobody bucking the system. Guess what, man? That's how Islam, Orthodox Islam, began to evolve out there in Newark. Then many of you know after he passed away from sugar, Imam Ali Muslim rahimullah became the Imam there. Another guy, he wasn't a student of knowledge. These dudes were religious. They were administrators. They were just loyal to the mission. So when you went around, so when people came and started going overseas and studying and coming back and challenging these guys, you got to realize these weren't guys who they just believe, right? They just have belief, but they didn't have knowledge like that. So when people came back and started studying, right? Like you were coming at people they was looking at, it was like you was sounding like the Charlie Brown teacher with this approach that people were coming back like wah, 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 wah. And a lot of dudes wanted to throw people that was Salafi down the steps head first. When they listen, I know for a fact we was in the masjid and some Salafi brothers came to us in the Bronx and Taqwa Jihad, and they was up there on the Musalla. And the sister that was at the masjid, Sister Lee at the time, she was playing the lecture by Imam Muhammad. They was sitting there because everybody was on the Dawah mission. They was teaching some brothers. They came to her and said, yo, can you turn that off? We don't want, we trying to teach you here. So when we came up for Salat, she told us, she was like, yo, the brothers said X, Y, and Z. I said, what brothers said X, Y, and Z? She said, them 3 brothers over there. I said, them 3 brothers said that? So me and my brother went over there. I said, after we offer Salat, y'all gotta leave. He said, bro, you can't kick us out the masjid. I said, let me ask you this, bro. You want to leave on your feet, on your head, but after Salat, you leave in this masjid because you ain't gonna come up in here disrespecting a sister like that. But that was a lot of
hold on. Let me jump in real fast. Let me jump in real fast and ask you, because I think this kind of hints to the point that I was making. Now in that situation, did you find your response to them being because they were disrespectful and not utilizing the proper manners and wisdom in that given situation?
That's exactly what it was, because their demeanor was in sense of entitlement, like, yo, y'all ignorant, we not. Right. This is the but you in somebody else's house.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? You're in somebody 100%. Else's house. And see the point, and that's what I'm saying, is that the evolution of the community in this right here is that people don't understand. Like I just sent Ismail an article that was happening. It was called the 40-day siege out in Brooklyn in Masjid Taqwa that we did back in the days. Y'all know that, right? The 40-day siege. This was all over the paper, the Washington Post, the New York Times, right? The Muslims were standing out there, and I'm talking about 90, early 88, 89, 90 in Brooklyn, when New York was gunsmoke. Muslims was out there dealing with crack dealers, shutting down the city. You understand what I'm saying? In Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. So like Najeeb said, there was a lot of people that came, that sacrificed, that put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, their freedom on the line, their life on the line. They didn't have all of this information that we have now. So, but the point is that when the knowledge came, instead of it bettering the relationships and evolving the people, it caused such a major friction, man. I mean, I seen friends stop speaking to each other. People just dislike each other. And like you said, Sadiq, is that when the term Salafi mentioned, you could be saying everything correct, but once the person say, yeah, Salafi, the people just automatically stop listening because of bad experiences. And like I told Ismail, I said, my introduction to Salafi would happen to be in the joint. A brother came to me and he just started asking me questions. He didn't come to me. I was like the inside Muslim leader, and he was just asking me questions, and I would be like dumbfounded. I was like, nah, and I would throw something at him, and he'd be like, yo, you sure? I'd be like, yeah. He said, well, read this. And the way he approached me, his dawah just made me inquisitive. So I wrote home to my sister. I said, yo, send me this book. And I ended up getting the book Sound Creed by Sheikh Fawzan Hafidullah. And that joint just blew my mind. And I just started just reading everything. And it just felt like I just took my shahada. I was like, wow, I didn't know all of this stuff. But it was there before. But the presentation that was coming to me, it just shut me down. Like, yo, I don't want to hear nothing that none of you got to say. But my point is that for the Dawah, you have to understand the history and the evolution of Islam in this country, right? In the urban community, and be patient with the people and approach the people and show some respect, right? If you study the history of the Prophet Sallallahu, like those people, they knew each other, right? And they were able to trace each other lineage back decades, years. Abdullah, the son of this, the son of that, the son of that. So they knew each other. They knew what tribe had beef with each tribe, who stole who camel, who did X, Y, Z. So when they was giving dawah, like they knew each other. They knew the temperature of the people. We come and we give dawah, and what's so crazy, this whole thing, I call it the Salafi wars, right? Like this whole thing doesn't even backfire within the people of the Sunnah community. So all I say is that it's an important topic. You got to pay tribute. You got to pay homage, but you got to understand that. So when you're dealing with a lot of these men, like out in LA, Najeeb, like AK Hassan, that's a friend of mine. You understand? But you know, he's not no Islamic scholar. AK is an administrator. You don't understand what I'm saying? Like, I remember I would be talking to AK. He used to tell me the stories of him and the nation, how he used to jump in the car and drive all of this money down to Elijah Muhammad to the National House. Like, AK is an administrator. He's a soldier. These people were not those type of people. So when you come and you talk, they had the title of imam, but it wasn't how you look at it now. You understand what I'm saying? These were people that were just soldiers. They believed in the mission that Imam Muhammad said. So all they was trying to do was implement it by any means necessary. So when you approach these people, you can't be like, yo, he's ignorant, he's that, or I'm entitled, I went over here, I studied, I'm better than this person. You may know a lot of that. But these dudes probably can outthink you better than you could even think about. And that's what happened. Dudes went overseas and studied, but they didn't come back with wisdom. They didn't come back with thinking skills. They didn't come back with nothing that could establish a community with longevity and keep families together and build economic strength and take all of that dawah and now figure out to take these abstract and theoretical concepts and create a concrete blueprint plan to live them out. And that's where you try to bridge the best of these worlds. And so we from these tribes. These people know us. So it's time to be kind and be patient and talk to them and be gentle and invite them the way the brother invited me, with good character, with good manners, with questions. Are you sure? Does that make any sense? Are you sure about, like, a brother, when I came home, I was sitting with an imam, a friend of mine, and he was asking me questions about Allah's hand and on the throne and all of that and so on and so forth. And he gave the question, and I just said, and as I closed, I listened to him, and because he knew I was Salafi now, and I was listening, I said, before I even present any dalil, I just want to ask you one question. I said, these are important topics, right? He said, that's right. I said, they so important that do you not think that Muhammad would have mentioned it, right? Who know? I said, who knows Allah better than Muhammad, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? He said, no. I said, so do you not think he would have mentioned it? Or if he didn't mention it, his closest companions would have mentioned it. I said, so I'm going to say that one. I said, the next thing, I got so much baggage and sins that I need to repent for. I'm not going to add saying something about Allah that he didn't authorize me to say to my repertoire. I said, so I'm going to just leave it at that. So before, and said, now I'm going to say that. Now, do you want the evidence? And he sat back. He said, right, I never even thought about that. That's because I know what you're going to say. It may sound deep to you, but it's so important that you not think that Muhammad would have said that about Allah. And when I said that, it totally changed his paradigm. It shifted his thinking on that topic. I didn't say, yo, you ignorant. Yo, man, you an innovator, or you this, that, and the third, man. No, I'm talking to a friend of mine, man. A person who I benefited from in my Islamic evolution. I'm not going to approach him like that. This is a casual conversation. So I presented it to him like that. Why? Because I know the demographic. I know the people. I know the history. I know what these people contributed to. I know these were the people in New York State prison when I took my shahada in the late 80s. These were the guys who were there that bust open and put those messages in there that allowed for the Bilal Philip books to get into the prison system, and all of those books where people now felt that they knew more than everybody else. These were the brothers who sacrificed their lives. These were the brothers from the Attica riots and all of these things. So you pay homage, you pay respect, you attribute to these brothers, but at the same time, you don't have to subscribe to anything, but you can still be respectful. So, and that's it. I just wanted to say that. And I think it's a very important topic because it leads a strategy in terms of the dawah, in terms of presenting, and in terms of repairing the reputation of Salafis in this country. I think is very important. Assalamu alaikum.
Khalil, before you roll.
Yeah, don't roll yet.
You brought up AK Hassan, man. You spent some time in LA, huh?
You know, I know AK because I used to head up the security for Imam Muhammad. So I would see AK all the time. We come to Chicago. I came out to LA. I spent time in LA when Imam Muhammad did the Juma there and Savior's Day. So I would spend a lot of time with AK.
How old are you,
Huh?
How old are you?
I'm,
So you must be older than us then, huh?
no. I only turned. I'm about to turn 50, Shay.
Okay. Because you know, just some man, AK Hassan was the West Coast regional minister for the
Nation.
NOI. Yeah,
Yeah,
during this time.
I know. Listen, AK told me, he said, I used to jump in the car personally with $500,000 and drive it every week to the National House. Every week. And we would sit there. Listen, I know all of those stories, man. You understand that's what I'm trying to tell you. These guys that were appointed, they were administrators. Yusuf Shah was sent down to Texas to be an imam. He ain't know nothing about religion, but he was loyal to Imam Muhammad. That's all. Most of these guys from back then, they were soldiers. They weren't scholars and students.
Yeah,
And not.
but that's what I was about to say because AK Hassan had 1,000 fruit under his
Of
authority.
course. Listen, Imam
So he's a
Ali
legend. He's a legend in LA.
But listen, who I came up under was Imam Ali Rashid and Masjid Malcolm Shabazz. Now, don't forget, that was Captain Edmund. He was the West Coast captain. So Imam Muhammad brought him from California to Harlem. Why? Because he had moved Farrakhan out of there and brought Farrakhan to Chicago, right?
Okay.
So you needed, Harlem was so important to the mission, you had to have somebody strong. So who's stronger than Ali Rashid? He was the West Coast captain. He was the strongest. That was a person that Malcolm said when he got on the elevator and he saw him at the airport in Los Angeles, and he looked at him. He looked like he had a look of a dog with rabies in his eyes. He was staring at him. You understand what I'm saying? You know, LA, you remember the zebra killings. You understand? This is the type of dudes that were put into place. And then when he went down to Philadelphia, and Imam Muhammad used to be, he lived in Philly. He was the minister there. And so when he went to Philly, now look at Philly is the hedge point of Salafi in this country. But Philly always had a reputation of gangsters. Minister Jeremiah was the minister there. Sam Christian was the captain, but he was also the head of the Black Mafia, right? And that was the captain of the FOI, but he was also the head of the Black Mafia. But when Imam Muhammad went there, he said, if you're in his book, As the Light Shining from the East, because Philly was a special place in his heart, he went to Philadelphia. And what happened was, he said he felt disgusted. He went in there, he seen these people with mink coats and diamond rings. He said it looked like a gangster convention. And he broke that whole thing apart. You understand what I'm saying? Bounced Jeremiah up out of there, disbanded the FOI. He said because it looked like a gangster convention.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
You look at the Salafis down there half the time, beefing with each other. It's like a Salafi gangster commission. Their knowledge came, but some of the same behavior and character traits still exist. But if you don't know the history, you won't be able to pinpoint why certain things exist to this day.
Right. Can I before you roll, I want to ask the brothers a question that I think is part of the problem. And this also goes to answering another aspect of the question that Ismail Jazallah Khaira had asked. And that is, I think, one of the problems in the way that we interacted with some of our elders is that we forgot ourselves and we forgot who we are and we forgot who they are, right? And I'm saying that to say is that I think, you know, the listener can hear from some of what you mentioned, the tumultuous history and the rough upbringing of many African Americans, right? If not, arguably you could say all the African Americans, because these are people that survived the horrors of slavery. So that within itself is going to produce a certain type of individual that's going to be given to harshness and dealing with things in a rough and tough manner, right? And they so I'm saying to say is that when I really believe that us as students, we on some levels forgot, and I'm talking about the Black students, we forgot who we were, right? We came back and we started interacting with people, not taking into account who they were. So we would interact with them in a rough manner, in a tough manner, forgetting who they were. But at the same time, we forgot who we was, because we know ourselves and the backgrounds that we come from. If somebody come at us too hard, then it's just going to be two bulls, ramming horns with each other. You know what I mean? Two rams just butting heads with each other. That, and without stepping outside of ourselves and putting ourselves in their shoes, subhanallah, how far could we really get? And you coming at a soldier, right, in a hostile manner, and not expect him to become on his guard at the very least, and or attack you back. You know what I mean? And then we got surprised when these things would happen, when they would treat us like this, and we would get surprised. Well, how they acting like that? We on the hawk and this and that, to the end of it, not realizing that our whole approach was ill-advised to begin with. You know what I mean? And this is what I think was, as I'm seeing from my own personal experience and from that which I witnessed from others as being perhaps part of the problem. But I want to get your take on that point.
Let me say something, Sadiq, real quick. I had you be thinking and you reflecting on the past. I was telling Ismail, and I was saying that when we came up, right? You see how y'all doing all of these classes now. I may go, you got classes, Abu Yusuf have classes, Abdul Rauf and Tahir and them got classes at United. It's everywhere you can look. You have all of these classes on all of these various topics, right? Everybody is doing this. Then you have all of these particular books that's translated in English right now. Aqida Wasatiyya, just so many Thalathul Usul, all of this information, right? When we came up, right, back in the 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, right? And all of these eras when we were young. Going all the way up, man, late 90s, right? Majority of Masajid didn't have no class. There wasn't classes going. We was doing a lot of freestyle. There was a time, man, we didn't even know the word Tawheed. We was doing, I don't know if y'all remember, we was having Mubadi classes, right? We was dealing with that. We had all of the books that was translated from Pakistan where Salat was called Namaz, right? Or Maududi books, right? We was dealing with the 3-point principles of Maududi, Mubadi. So, and then up into that, right? We were just freestyling, right? I mean, straight freestyling. We didn't know basically nothing outside of the Salat, the 3 Qus. If anybody knew more than that, and his tajweed was halfway good, we didn't even know tajweed. Most guys were singing the Salat. And if it sounded good, we thought he was on point. Y'all know what I'm saying, man.
Yeah, I remember that.
The guys was singing the Salat, and if it sounded halfway decent, and don't let them know Shams, Duha, don't let them know that, boy.
Oh, Buruj, if they knew Buruj, subhanallah.
Oh, it was over with.
It was over.
It was over with. So this is what I'm saying. Like, we act like those times didn't exist, Sadiq. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
this is what we act like those times didn't exist. You understand? Boom. Then next, boom, Essentials of Tawheed hit, right? Bilal Phillips. He came with a lot of his books. Those were great. Those were I remember when the first time I picked that up, I'm like, what is this here? Tawheed? What? You understand what I'm saying? Many brothers didn't know this stuff. So what I'm saying is that we have to sometimes take a step back and look at who the people were. So I remember this brother, a bit used to tell me, he said, here you go, boy, Muslim names and Negro brains, right? We got to realize that majority of us were Negroes more than we were Muslims, man, for more years than Muslims. And then we didn't really have too much Islam. We just knew that you can't be a foul dude and just try to figure it out along the way. So now we have all of these classes, we have all of these books and everything. So now we figure that, we got these classes, but what's that microwave mentality? Y'all ain't hip yet? Yo, bro, you was in Yemen, you was in Medina, I was in Brooklyn. Stop. Be patient with me. You understand what I'm saying? That's the reality of it, man. You sitting over there with Sheikh Fulan, you can understand his talk. Bro, I'm still speaking Ebonics. You got to understand the demographic. So you have a guy who's giving a class, right? You sit on the Musella. You got a large contingency of functional illiterates, but you want to show people that you know so much. You speaking in so much Arabic. You floating between Arabic, the King's English, back to Arabic, and the dude barely understand what you're talking about. You're not even really hitting them, right? And you don't understand. So the people don't understand that, man. And that's what I'm saying. Like we losing a whole bunch of people trying to show off to each other. Keep that when you with another group of people, but when you come back to the common man who came from that era of freestyling for 25 years of his Islamic life, man, didn't know too much. I told him, I tell you, when I was in there in that cell reading them books, it was like, I felt like a new Shahada. I'm like, wow, I didn't know this. Oh, wow, Allah's thrown me, man. Oh, wow, he said, what? I was talking about his hand meant his authority, his throne meant his power. I'm like, wow. You understand what I'm saying?
Speak to the people on their level.
On their level,
right.
Man.
That's one of the disconnects and problems of us as well. You know what I mean? Because I'm gonna be real with you. I'm real critical. You know what I mean on myself and on us as students, right? There are definitely things that we could have done and need to improve on. Things we could have done better and things we need to do better moving forward. So I mean, I understand. There's a lot of hindrances on the brothers and the brothers that were here. I understand that, but I think a lot of the fault, at least that we are, that we have are responsible for changing it. That's in our power to change was really from us. I think a lot of the fault was from us, like you said, speaking over people's heads, busying people with topics that they weren't ready for, or that they just really didn't understand, had a hard time understanding, right?
And just straight up breaking away from the community.
Straight up breaking away from the community. Now, I want to ask y'all this though too. Do you think? Because I was talking to one of our elders. I'm not going to say who he is. I want to, divulge that. But I was speaking to one of our elders, and I told him, I said, "Listen, Sheikh, I said, you like my uncle, you know what I mean? And I understand, and I understand where you from, right? And I understand your jargon, how you speak, and so on and so forth." And I was like, I understand that if somebody else heard you say certain things, they may not understand what you mean. They may think you mean something totally different. It comes across as real hostile. And I know you don't mean nothing by it, but that's because I understand where you're from and I understand the culture. You know what I'm saying? Do you think that some of us forgot? Like, I can only speak for my own self. I know that it was a time where I didn't take any of that into consideration, especially when I was younger. I'm looking at things like, black and white, as if I'm not American, as if I don't understand the American culture, as if I don't understand African Americans, as if I don't understand slang and, Ebonics and so on and so forth. I'm looking at things, real technically. Well, no, but you said this, brother. And and subhanAllah, it caused a lot of problems, you know what I mean? With people, that's not what they intended. That's just how it came off, seemingly from someone who don't know the culture. But when you know the culture, you realize he don't mean nothing by it. And I told his brothers, I said, you like my uncle. You say bugged out stuff from time to time, but I understand where you're coming from. I understand you're not trying to say nothing really crazy. That's just how we talk. But if somebody else heard you, oh, subhanAllah, they'll take that completely wrong, right? Anyway, do y'all think that was part of the problem? Like, we start looking at people and weighing them without taking into account these cultural nuances?
Me, in my humble opinion, is definitely a part of the problem. And there's no other way that you can't take in the historical aspect of where people have come from. What was their introduction to Islam? Where was Islam at in the urban communities in the late 70s, 80s? Now, listen, man, you got to realize majority of people, there's been so quote unquote Orthodox or Sunni Islam, whatever you want to call it, in America prior to 1975. We all know that they're historical messages, but they were not the prevalent introduction. The largest thing in America prior to that was a nation of Islam. We all know that. Like, so stop acting like that ain't the what's up. You understand what I'm saying? We know that.
Yes, because Sunni Islam was very weak.
Which was, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So we got to stop acting like that's not a part of people's history. You understand what I'm saying? Listen, Malcolm X, like, come on, bro. How many people have Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali have influenced, right, on becoming Muslim? You understand that? That was my introduction, was Malcolm X. So my point is, if you don't understand all of this, right, and don't understand how to approach, and you understand what I'm saying, and show a person, you don't have to keep telling the person, yo, your glass of water is dirty. No, just keep showing them the clean glass of water. And as you mentioned, said, whoever's going to drink it is going to drink it. Whoever Allah guides, he's going to guide. Whoever he allows to be misguided, khalas, there's nothing we could do about that, right? But don't let it fall on us because we got bad character. We still running around like Crips, Bloods, Tomahawks, and all of that mentality. You understand what I'm saying? And then using that with our dawah, right? You cannot continue to do that and understand why it's having a bad result, because we are presenting it ugly. And that's the reality. If you don't listen, you gave,
not at all.
Ezako, you gave a timely talk, and this is what you told my dealing with contemporary things. You gave a talk a few weeks ago about the mental health. Pay attention to the mental health of our children, right?
No.
Then the next day, Regina King's son committed suicide.
Yeah.
Right? I was like, wow, so come on, he just gave this talk, paying attention. And then I looked at that and I said to myself, wow, this dude had a wealthy mother, famous, very inspirational mother, right? Father, businessman, and all of that. And this young man committed suicide. Like, wow, subhanAllah. And but that's a topic. That's good. And so what we have to realize is that as Salafis, right, you have to address what's happening to the people, right? The Muslims, they're suffering from things right now. Muslims, everybody ain't together. We have PTSD from certain things. We suffering all of the things that's happening in the community, in the world, and what's going on amongst us. So you have to let them know that the dawah addresses these issues. And my last point, pay attention to what strategy, right? I learned a lot from Imam Muhammad Rahimullah. I'm not the guy who's gonna sit there and talk about errors and this, that, because he contributed a lot to my Islamic evolution. And this is on private, not talks, with private dinners, being at his home, traveling with him, right? But I would just ask, like, and I would tell people, like, I listen to some of these storefront imams, and they gave all of this negativity towards them and gave a lot of things about them, right? And then I ask people sometimes, I'm like, wow, I wonder how many people would have managed his pressure at that time to do what he did at the moment and era that they did. Because I know some of these Negroes can't even manage $5,000. Nevertheless, what he had access to and what he managed and how he handled and what he knew of Islam to bring people from that highest level of shirk to come out and say, listen, yo, my father ain't the messenger. Farad ain't Allah. Y'all been playing this whole thing wrong, for lack of a better term, right? And then I would speak to him about his travels to Saudi. Because see, when he went to Saudi, it ain't like none of us went to Saudi. Don't get it twisted. You understand what I'm saying? When he went to Saudi, carpet was rolled, royal family picked him up, and he sat down with who's who in Saudi, right? So I would ask him about some of these experiences. And so then I told him, man, Hamza, Hafidullah, and Ansar Sunnah one time, I said, have you ever paid attention? Have you ever, this is a man who met Sheikh bin Baz. Y'all talk about Sheikh, but this is a man who actually sat with him and broke bread with him and had conversations with him and knew him personally. And when after the what we call the transition, when Sheikh bin Baz said, they asked him, well, what do you need in America? He said, just send me some teachers. And I don't know if y'all know that that's how everybody came from the Rabatah started coming over here. That door was open with him. When everybody started coming to New York, Dr. Khalid Anderson, everybody coming to New York, and all of these people that was coming, when they started sending all of them students from Medina graduates, that's what they did. Imam Muhammad said, nah, we don't need the money, just send some students. But my point is, you never heard none of these great scholars give a run on him. They knew his error.
In fact, Sheikh bin Baz used to advise him.
That was a friend of his. He used to advise him.
This is something my father used to tell me before my father even knew what Salafia was.
That's what I'm saying. Sheikh, man, all of these people were friends. I mean, this was phone call. Because you got to understand how big that was. America, the great America. This was a man who came and said, listen, don't forget back then he took the largest convention of people to Hajj. So
but even greater than that, which when WD is spoken about by a lot of by some of the brothers, and a lot of mistakes are just brought up. One of the things that I rarely ever hear mentioned, which he deserves a lot of credit for, he was instrumental in initiating the largest conversion of people within America from one religion to another.
listen, and that's what I'm saying. But mind you, let's look at the benefit also on top of that. This was Muhammad Ali's man. There's not no question about it. And how much people came into Islam from Muhammad Ali? This was the person that Malcolm said in his autobiography, right? Introduced him to Islam, Orthodox Islam. He said in the autobiography, he said that's the only spiritual son Elijah Muhammad has. He's the only one. But that's not even the point. The wisdom is that the wisdom of those who truly know Islam, the ones that we say are scholars that we take from, Abdul Hakim Abu Rayhana, he always tells me this. He said a lot of people would hurt a lot of people. They didn't spend a lot of time around their teachers to learn the manners of their teachers. He said, so when I was in, I used to just sit back and watch the sheikhs and how they interacted with people. He said, because you're going to learn so much compared to what you learning in these books. And that's what it is. So nobody stepped back and looked and say, wow, these people knew this man. They knew the errors. They knew it. But you don't have no recording of them saying, yo, listen, homeboy is blah, 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 blah. Because they knew how important it was to let this thing take its course. And that Allah is never not out of control.
And if I can expound on that, right? If I can expound that, because you got some of our youth, right, and some of our elders who act like youth, who will say, well, look at those brothers, they're defending Wafd Muhammad, they're mentioning his good deeds and his bad, they do muwazanat, and so on and so forth, right? So we know we got people out there like that that think like that. Now, bila shak without, I think you brothers are just mentioning matters of facts. Like these are factual things that have taken place. And we understand that, right? Yeah. You're mentioning matters of facts. Now, what I would say for, Sheikh bin Baz, right? If you look at Sheikh bin Baz and the situation that he was in and the situation that Wafd Muhammad was in, rahmatullahi alayhima, may Allah ta'ala have mercy upon them both. You have to weigh the pros and the cons. You have to weigh the harms and the benefits, right? Now, the advice that was given to him behind closed doors, I'm pretty sure was addressing some of the errors that he had fallen into and teaching him, right? Yep. But what would have been really the upside in publicly coming out and refuting him, calling people to ostracize him, calling people to abandon him, so on and so forth? Like, what would have been the real upside in doing that, especially when what was being asked for was send us teachers? Now, alhamdulillah, brothers like Dawood Adib, benefited from going to El Medina. So he came back and he taught the brothers like myself, Salafiyah. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. He came back and he taught us, what he had learned and what he had benefited from. And this was really the point, was that, of course, there were going to be certain things that the elders had that was, not correct, but they were calling them to the Tawheed, calling them to leave off that kufr, calling them to enter into Islam, so on and so forth, right? Sending them teachers to educate and to teach and to teach the Sunnah, so on and so forth. So the point is that there was wisdom that was being, implemented. You had to deal with that situation in a wise manner, because if not, then what would have been the outcome? Ostracize everybody, bring the rug down on them, and so on and so forth. And then, how much good would have been cut off? how much good will have been cut off. And it's very important that brothers understand that we can't look at these communities like everything is black and white. We have to take into consideration who we dealing with, what they've been through, where they came from, and what they know. What they know and what they don't know. So yeah, he's doing this stuff because he think it's right. It's not right. So so on and so forth. He made this thing thinking it was correct, but it's not correct, right? But what he didn't know. It wasn't like he did it obstinately. It wasn't like he knew what the haq was and then he went against it, intentionally, right? Now I'm pretty sure there's some imams from the Wafdi Muhammad community that did that. They knew they what they was doing was wrong and they still did it. We're not talking about them. We're talking about the average Muslim who didn't know any better. And a lot of times I'm saying this, that from my encounters with elders from the Wafdi Muhammad community, was that when you explain certain things to them, that's the response. SubhanAllah, Jazakallah khair. I didn't know that.
Look, I'm one of
Those years, I never heard that before. Jazakallah khair. Like it's almost as if I never saw that. I never saw that verse before.
and I'm a testimony to that, 1,000%.
Yeah. So I mean, these are things I think we have to always remember, that when you're dealing with the general masses of the Muslims, you can't come at them with an approach that is black and white. You can't come at them with a binary approach. Either it's on or it's off. You have to realize that people have their baggage, people have their history, people have their background, and people have their problems. So you have to be able to assess them, right? And you have to be able to do a assess and prioritize. Okay, what's your greatest problem? You have to do a triage. What's the greatest issue? I'm gonna deal with this greatest issue. We're gonna get to these other issues, right? And I might mention these other issues right now, but I need to focus in on this greater issue. I need to focus in on, the tawheed, the mutaba'a, the Prophet ﷺ, following the Prophet ﷺ, not putting anyone's speech in front of the speech of the Prophet ﷺ, right? So on and so forth. We need to deal with these fundamental things. We need to deal with these the issues connected to aqeedah and so on and so forth, right? And while we're doing that, we're going to talk about this other stuff as well. But there has to be a real sense of educating the Muslims, and that doesn't happen overnight. The same way their problems weren't made overnight, they're not going to be corrected overnight. It takes time.
That's a good point. To the brothers, I've saw several people enter the waiting room and then leave the waiting room. So I'm not sure if that's by accident. If you enter the waiting room, I see you, and we'll eventually enter you into the discussion. So don't think that you are being ignored, or you may not have been seen, and thus forth and so on. Ismail, are you still there? He texted me. I thought maybe if you're there, you're muted, but maybe he's not there.
I'm here, Rock. I'm here.
Oh, okay, Barakallahu
I'm
Fik.
here. Barakallah.
We've been missing you, man. That's why I was calling on you.
Yeah, no, man. I'm benefiting from these discussions, man. With me, honestly, wallahi, man, there's so many mistakes that Salafis, us as a whole, I mean, a lot of it was due to ignorance, have made when it comes to approaching these issues. I mean, one of the fundamental mistakes when it comes to the elders and these leaders of communities is that many of us weren't educated when we started to learn about points of minhaj and so on and so forth. We weren't educated and weren't made privy to the difference between a mubtadi' and a mukhti', right? So if somebody comes and a majority of these people that we deal with when it comes to our elders, the majority of them that I've met, it's not a matter, we're not dealing with Jahm Ibn Safwan, or, we're not dealing with these kinds of people. We're not dealing with, these mubtadi'een that have ilm, that have, organized confusion. We're dealing with people who, for the most part, really just lack education. You know what I mean? And the brothers, a lot of us, I mean, I don't really know the current climate climate with, you know, the and the du'at now. But I know before, a lot of damage was done, like the examples that Khalil gave. A lot of damage was done due to people reading these tremendously beneficial and essential books like Sharh al-Sunnah and Usul al-Sunnah, right? By those two illustrious imams, rahimahumullah, and applying them to these elders in the community who really just were uneducated and acting as if they had fell into the same categories as Rishdin ibn Sa'd and all these different kinds of people. You know what I mean? These were, subhanAllah, you know, it don't work like that. And I don't think that was clarified to a lot of people. And even nowadays, you'll find the brothers, the way they deal with each other. We don't want to go off topic too much, but a lot of this comes from people not understanding the difference between the mubtadi and the muqti, and somebody who has knowledge and somebody who the hujjah was established against versus somebody who, you know, doesn't have any knowledge. No, that's all I wanted to add.
Barakallahu fiqh. Well, we've been talking, I believe, for almost 2 hours, if not 2 hours. So I'll let if that was your last word, Ismail, I'll let Abu Abdus Salam get his last words in, inshallah.
Now, inshallah ta'ala, I really want to stress and I really want to highlight, because we're always trying to move forward. We're always trying to move forward and we're always trying to better our situations, inshallah ta'ala. So I really want the brothers to really look at what the elders were able to accomplish from schools, from masajid, from communities, from programs that they had, right? You know, feeding the people and, you know, giving out clothes and teaching people basic manners and things like that, life skills, right? Teaching them basic life skills. And I want us to think about that in light of what they did not have, right? So a person say, oh, but they wasn't teaching, you know, Tawheed and Sunnah. Yeah, because they didn't know about that like that. You know what I mean? In fact, people say, the one who's deprived of something, you can't give it. You can't give what you don't have. You understand? So, but they did their best, right? So I want us to look at that, because I had one of the brothers, he mentioned to me, he said, you know, he said, the brothers, y'all be mentioning, you know, the people from the past, you know what I mean? And you know, why y'all be mentioning them like that? You know what I mean? Talking about they used to feed people and all this type of stuff. Like, I don't want to hear none of that stuff, man. I don't want to hear that. And I told my son, you know, I appreciate that feedback. I said, but I need you to understand, we're not mentioning it from the standpoint of you know, from a standpoint of nostalgia. No, not at all. But we're mentioning it from the standpoint of, look what they were able to do, given their limited resources, given their limited knowledge. Now, they was able to do that, and they did not know what we know from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, the way of the Salaf. They didn't know when they were able to do these things. So if they could do it, then no doubt we should be doing it, right? And if they could do it and we still have them in our communities, why wouldn't we bring them in? And I'm talking about the Salafis from that era, from that generation. They're not as active as they should be. We don't utilize them like we should. If they were a part of some of these programs in the past, then they should be helping to establish these programs now. But we have to bridge that gap and to make them feel welcome to do these things and encourage them. Help us out establishing these basic life programs. You know, people have life coaches now because they need that. They need help with basic life skills because there's a disconnection between them and the elders. So they have to hire somebody to be a life coach to teach them basic things about life, you know, as absurd as that may sound. But the point is that we have elders in our community that can help the youth with those type of things, right? Can help the youth with those basic skills, but we have to start using them more. We have to start drawing from that human capital more, so our communities can move forward. So again, my point is, in saying all that, is that we have to acknowledge and we have to stop ignoring what they have done in the past as if it didn't happen. And at the same time, we have to realize the limited resources and by way in which, and they still were able to do these certain things as a motivation for us, that if they was able to do it, given their restrictions, right, then no doubt we should be able to be doing these same things. We should not just be doing them, but we should have taken them even a step further. But we're in a lot of situations where now we have to start these things all over again due to this dysfunction that exists within our communities. And all of this, it really has to stop. And in closing, Malcolm X in his autobiography, he had mentioned one point, which I think we really need to really ponder on, especially those of us whom Allah Ta'ala has blessed us and guided us to the Sunnah and guided us to Salafiyah, is that he said that, we are blamed for having wrong beliefs and misunderstandings about Islam, which he acknowledged, which we had wrong beliefs and misunderstandings about Islam. And that's why he accepted Islam. He took his shahada because he realized, I'd have to take my shahada. We've been taught wrong all this time. But he spoke very, in all honesty. He said, but you know what? A part of that is y'all fault. A part of that is the fault of the Muslim world. He said, because y'all didn't come and educate us. We didn't know. So we were fed this and thought it was correct. We had no voice to opposition. So yeah, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that point is a very important point that I think we need to focus in on, is that we have to give dawah. We have to give dawah. We have to try to educate the people as best we can, and we have to go to certain places that we're comfortable in going and where other people may not be comfortable in going. Like one of the brothers, he told me, he said, listen, going down to the hood and giving dawah it was a brother that's not African American. I'm not going to say what he was because not the point, but it was a brother that was not, he's not African American, but he told me very straight. He said, the reason why we don't go and give dawah in the ghettos and in the urban communities, urban settings, he said, it's because we're scared. We're scared because of the propaganda that they've gotten from the society, or scared because they grew up and got beat up before by black people, perhaps, sometimes. So they said, we're scared. So we're scared to go give them dawah. I told them, well, I don't have that problem. I don't have that problem. I'm comfortable around people who look like me. So I don't have that problem. But the point is that if we're not going to make these efforts in speaking with them, and we're not going to make these efforts in calling them, then how, to what extent could we really blame them for not knowing for not knowing? Allah Musta'an.
I'm going to leave it on that note, inshallah. Barakallahu fiqh. Once again, I would remind the listening audience to hit the subscribe button for those that are not subscribed. And likewise for the people to hit the like button as it relates to the video. We'll try and keep up with updates on this channel concerning what we have going on and thus forth and so on. But with that said, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. It's hoped that the brothers and sisters benefited from this discussion. And with that, Assalamu alaikum wa